You're listening to Catholic Chicago. Ahead, the Archdiocese of Chicago brings you programs about the people, events, and issues that touch our lives. Welcome to Catholic Chicago.
Hello and welcome to the Black Catholic Initiative radio show, where we're talking about Black Catholic issues and events here in the Archdiocese of Chicago. You can listen to this radio show anywhere that you get your podcasts, on YouTube at Catholic Chicago. As well, we are on 750 AM WNDZ. My name is Father Michael Trail, and I'm your host here for the radio show, and I'm also honored to serve as the pastor of St. Thomas the Apostle Catholic Church and School in the historic Hyde Park neighborhood. I'm honored here to have a person in studio, which is a rarity for us here at the BCI. Normally, we do our interviews over Zoom. I'm honored to have Father Matthew S. O'Donnell, the pastor of St. Moses the Black in the Greater Grand Crossing neighborhood of Chicago, and my neighbor to the south. Father Matt also has the distinction of being the head of the Black Catholic Initiative, along with Deacon Jim Norman and Valerie Jennings. Welcome, Father Matt.
Thanks, Father Michael. Glad to be here today.
That's a real honor. It's nice to see you here downtown, because normally we see each other on the south side.
Absolutely.
So, Father Matt, the reason why I wanted to bring you on here today is to have you give a little bit of an update to the Black Catholic Initiative, some of the things that have taken place, and kind of where we're headed. Last time we had you on was back in November, and you were sharing a lot of the great things that were going to happen. And so some of those things have taken place. One of those things that have taken place is the event on February 4th, where we talked about the state of the Black Catholic community. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, so we had this great event back on February 4th, as you mentioned, at the Meyer Center, where we had over 100 leaders from the Black Catholic community that joined us for a time of reflection, a day of preparation as we're getting ready for the National Black Catholic Congress that's coming up this summer in July. And really just an opportunity to talk together as a community after all of the structural changes that have taken place in the Renew My Church process. And so it was really an exciting day. Deacon Jim and Valerie and I spent a lot of time working together to really think about, how do we talk about the future? How do we honor our past? How do we acknowledge everything that we went through during the process of Renew My Church? But most importantly, how do we gather people together in a space to be in person with one another and to really dream and plan towards the future?
No, that's great, Father Matt. So tell me, it sounds as though you had some really productive conversations, some good, honest conversation with one another, with us as a community, which is so important. Talk to me about some of the parishes and the constituencies that came together on that day.
Yeah, so right now, after we've gone through all of the structural changes of Renew My Church, we identified that we have 9 predominantly Black Catholic communities and one mission, the mission of St. Thomas More. And so these sort of 10 communities with others who serve the Black Catholic community gathered together to really just to pray together, to worship together, to celebrate together, to learn from one another, to listen to one another. And so we had representatives from each of those different parishes and communities who were present together to just really do that, to just be in each other's presence and to share with one another some of what they've experienced as communities. So like my parish of St. Moses the Black, your parish of St. Thomas the Apostle, to be there and to just walk with each other in this moment.
Absolutely. And what I loved about the event is that it was a great opportunity for the 9 historic parishes to come together, but also it gave space for parishes with a sizable or maybe even a small Black Catholic community, a space for them to be able to come together to be part of the larger community. I was able to send some representatives from St. Thomas the Apostle. Yeah, we're not one of the 9 historic parishes, but we do have a sizable Black Catholic population there. And talking to my parishioners and representatives who went to the event, it was a powerful moment for them to be able to be in that space together where we all had a common language and a common spirituality, where we have a common common experience of what it means to be Black and Catholic. And I know that my parishioners and representatives were really edified by that moment when they were able to come together.
I think one of the things that's true across the Archdiocese of Chicago, but particularly in the Black Catholic community, is that we spent the last several years talking about all the changes that were coming.
Yeah.
And we've experienced a lot of changes in the Black Catholic community. Parishes that have united together,
Right.
new names for parishes and communities, leaders who have moved and transitioned into new leadership opportunities and new communities. And really, this event on February 4th was meant to gather all of those people together, all of us together who minister and serve in the Black Catholic community,
Right.
to really start to talk about, okay, but now what do we do in this moment? And from that event that took place, we've come with some strategic initiatives that we want the Black Catholic Initiative to focus on, some things that are going to help us as we plan towards the future. So we want to focus on evangelization, we want to focus on building community, and we want to focus on leadership development. Those weren't just ideas that Deacon Jim and Valerie and I came up with together. That was from the listening that took place at this event in February. And so as people talked about what were the strengths of their community, what have some of the challenges have been over the last couple of years in uniting communities and parishes together, as we sort of become this new community,
Right.
of a smaller number of parishes, but hopefully a larger number of people.
Right.
It's to think about the future and who's going to continue to serve as priests and deacons and lay leaders in these communities.
Absolutely. And what I really appreciate about the event that took place is that it's in many ways, it's kind of a mirroring that happened on the local level. You know, I think about your experience when at St. Moses the Black, when you brought 3 communities into one, you were asking those same kind of questions on the local level. And what the February 4th event, what it was is, I think, and I know, was an opportunity for us to kind of have those same kind of conversations on a larger level with all the parishes together.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I hope people took away from the event, I know that I took away, is that we are stronger as a local community on the south and west side of Chicago today than we were a few years ago.
Definitely.
And that doesn't discount the pain and the discomfort and the challenges that a lot of us have had to experience as we've seen parishes close, unite, merge, and new parishes come to fruition. But I think what we wanted people to see on that day is we can be stronger when we work together. You know, I think one of the things in Renew My Church we've talked a lot about as an archdiocese is that we can't be parochial anymore.
Right.
We can't just be focused on that parish that we've always belonged to. And I think what the BCI wants to do in this moment is to really kind of tap into that spirit and that energy. How do we think bigger?
Right.
How do we work together more so that we can be a stronger presence, not just in the archdiocese, but in the city of Chicago, to give voice to a lot of the issues that are important in the Black Catholic community, to raise up leaders who are going to help sort of guide people through these difficult moments that we face as a city, as a nation, as a world.
Right.
And so I think there's a lot that in this moment, as we're coming together and becoming something new, that can give us some energy and hope as we look towards the future.
No, definitely. And one of the things that I've always found inspiring about our community is our twofold work of both evangelizing but also being good members of the community. You know, how often the countless stories of the presence of the Catholic Church in the South Side, the West Side, in our Black communities, where not only are we a place of worship, but also a place where we do such great outreach. And so having to bring those two pieces together and saying, okay, how can we also be a part of that? How can we do that in the future? That's a really important piece of it as well.
Yeah, and I think that's why one of our strategic initiatives is to do the work of evangelization.
Right.
To invite people into our communities, especially as some of the parishes, they've experienced new names. There's an opportunity and a need in neighborhoods to tell people who we are, and to honor the legacy parishes that have come together into these new places, and to think about how do we continue to reach out. So in our case at St. Moses the Black, we're in the Greater Grand Crossing neighborhood, but St. Dorothy and St. Clotilde are in the Chatham community. So how do we still have a presence? How do we evangelize and invite people into our community? And as we think about building community, one of the things we have to do is really get to know who we are now in this moment. With so many of the Black Catholic parishes receiving new names,
Right.
there's something exciting about that. As we think about this new moment for mission in the Archdiocese, there's something sad about that.
Sure.
And so part of how we come together as community is to really just start to identify, where is it that we come from?
Yeah.
Where have we come from in the past? Where's this moment, who we are in this present moment? Because that's really the way that we're going to be able to tell our story in the Archdiocese about the great work that's actually taking place.
And I know it's been so difficult for many people to lose their name, because in that name comes with that identity, right? But I really appreciate the dynamic that you're trying to hold between, you know, honoring our legacy but also mourning that, but also being excited about the new possibilities. You know, I also think about our legacy and our history about just for us as a Black community in the Archdiocese of Chicago in general, most of the times when we've come into a parish, we've come after another group that built that church. I think about your own parish right now, St. Moses the Black, and formerly known as St. Columbanus. African Americans were moving into that neighborhood into the 50s. Is one of the earliest parishes that welcomed African Americans. But the name St. Columbanus was an Irish name. It's an Irish bishop, and so, and yes, while that name is ingrained and proudly so in your parishioners and your neighbors, the opportunity to create a new name that is uniquely yours, that without the history of saying, well, that's a name that belonged to somebody else, but this is our new name. This is our identity right here, right now. There's something very powerful about being able to name yourself instead of inheriting a name that maybe doesn't sound like our community.
Yeah, and I think that's why parishes like Our Lady of Cabejo
Right.
and Our Lady of Africa and St. Moses the Black and St. Catherine Drexel, all of these names that are new,
Right.
And stories of either people or apparitions that have taken place that we have to learn together as Catholics, they do point us to this opportunity to learn more about our Catholic faith. And, on February 4th, when we had that event, we focused on Genesis chapter 12, and we thought about Abraham and Sarah and how they received a new name.
Yeah.
Right? And their new name was about this moment that God was calling them into a new mission.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for us in the BCI, that's how we want to talk about this moment. It isn't just that we change names for the sake of changing names, or
Right.
to just keep the peace, or to make certain groups happy, because that isn't the experience.
Right.
We did it because in this moment, there is a new mission.
Absolutely.
And for us to think together as a local community, what that is and how do we support each other in that, to me, that's exciting and life-giving.
Absolutely. And I think as we continue our conversation, we're going to take a quick break right now to hear some commercials about the great things happening in the Archdiocese as a whole. When we come back, we're going to continue our conversation, not just on the locally, but on the bigger level as well. We'll be right back.
Caring adults make all the difference in the lives of adolescents. Catholic Charities understands this, and our mentorship programs provide a free opportunity for young adults to spend time with volunteers who genuinely care about them. This program is ideal for youth aged 9 through 12 who may need support navigating the challenges of childhood and early adolescence. Our amazing volunteers serve as friends who help youth recognize their strengths and empower them to reach their full potential. Catholic Charities conducts a thorough background check on every volunteer, and our program coordinator closely monitors and supports every relationship. Mentoring is a fun after-school program that can help young adults build confidence and enjoy fun activities with their peers, too. To learn more, visit CatholicCharities.net or call 312-655-7970 in Cook County and 847-782-4224 in Lake County. We're connecting youth with great role models. Join us today.
Folks, you probably know that on March 13th, we celebrate the 10th anniversary of the election of Pope Francis as the Bishop of Rome. Ever since his election, he has asked the people of God to pray for him. And so we are joining in an effort asking Catholics on March 13th to say 10 Hail Marys for him. You can learn more about this and register your name at archchicago.org. I encourage all of you to participate in this support of the Holy Father as he celebrates a decade of service to the people of God.
For more than 20 years, Catholic Charities Adult Protective Services has been advocating for seniors who are the victims of abuse, neglect, confinement, or financial exploitation. With our partners at local, city, and state agencies, our trained case managers follow through on every concern that is brought to our attention in a cooperative way to ensure that our seniors are safe and protected. According to the Illinois Department on Aging, last year nearly 21,000 cases of elder abuse were reported in Illinois. Of these, only 5% were reported by seniors themselves. So raising awareness is an important part of this issue. If you are concerned about a senior you know, call 800-252-8966. That's 800-252-8966. With your help, we can stop elder abuse and look out for the seniors in our lives.
And welcome back to the BCI Radio Show, where we're talking about Black Catholic events and issues here in the Archdiocese of Chicago. We're continuing our conversation with Father Matt O'Donnell, who's the pastor of St. Moses the Black Parish in the Greater Grand Crossing neighborhood, and as well as one of the directors for the Black Catholic Initiative here in the Archdiocese of Chicago. Just before our break, we were talking about recapping our event on February 4th, where we were talking about the state of the Black community. Father Matt, one of the things that came out of that conversation on February 4th, you identified some of those points for development, and one of those is leadership development. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so we recognize that as we were there at that event on February 4th, and just from listening in other conversations, even for us as priests that take place at sort of our deanery meetings, it's this realization that as we look towards the future, as we think about this new moment for mission, as we think about the spiritual renewal that is being undertaken right now, that we need to raise up leaders for this moment. And we're blessed, I think, right, as a local community, that there's so many people who have served for a long time. Mm-hmm. But if this is a new moment, then it's to think about, well, what do these leaders need to have in order to be better equipped for how to respond to this moment, how to do evangelization, how to build community? What does radical hospitality look like? How do we respond to the issues? But also then thinking about our youth and young adults. How do we call forth new leaders, emerging leaders that are already in our parishes and our communities that are just waiting to be asked to be a part of something? And so that's hopefully one of the things that'll take place in all of our parishes, those sort of 10 communities that are predominantly African American. How do we call leaders forth in this moment? How does the BCI partner with others that are already kind of taking on some of this work in order to make sure that we actually do have people who are equipped for ministry as we look towards the future?
No, that's awesome, Father Matt, because especially I think about our community here in the Archdiocese of Chicago, and particularly in the Black community. We are blessed with some nationally renowned leaders and some nationally renowned programs. And we have a wealth of knowledge that I think other dioceses and archdioceses don't have. And so being able to tap into that, the current wealth of knowledge today, but being able to plug people in to say, how can we continue that excellence of leadership in the Black community is something very powerful.
Yeah, and I think talking about leadership development is not just about a set of skills, but it is about sort of thinking about people's vocations. Yeah. And we pray often that we would like to see more Black men enter into priesthood and diaconate, and more Black women enter into religious life. And we talk about how to better support married couples in our parishes and those who are living a single life as a vocation. And so using vocations as a way of really thinking about how do we call forth people to live fully in their vocation and to help communities really tap the next generation so that we do have leaders that are able to continue to move our community towards the future.
Absolutely. And it's both in service, it's both service to the church inside the church, through work in parishes and other ecclesial structures, but then also too just like that outside work of having a deep rooted sense of faith and being able to be a leader that's based in faith out in the community.
Yeah, and so I think as the BCI thinks about these strategic initiatives of evangelization and community and leadership development, it isn't that the BCI is going to take on the work of doing everything,
Right.
but really that the BCI in this moment can be sort of that hub that brings together all of our different parishes and communities and people all throughout the Archdiocese of Chicago, and to really give the opportunity to parishes and people to really plan for how best to do this. So the action items that can happen in our parishes, so that all of us can be working together,
Right.
that we're actually working in tandem as we're trying to really move into this moment and renew my church.
Oh, definitely. You know, Father Matt, one of the things I love that an event that takes place every couple of years is the National Black Catholic Congress, and this summer we'll be celebrating a Congress in the Baltimore area. I've talked about Congress here on our show before, but can you give just a little recap for those who aren't familiar with it, maybe for our listeners who aren't so familiar with Congress, and talk about that connection that we're having here in Chicago to the larger Congress?
Yeah, the National Black Catholic Congress, as you mentioned, is something that's supposed to take place about every 5 years. COVID sort of interrupted that. I think the last one was in 2017.
That's right.
And, you know, Congress is an opportunity for the Black Catholic community from across the United States to gather together, to really listen to one another, to learn from one another, and then to plan for work to be done in that period, that interim period until the next Congress. And so oftentimes what happens is a pastoral plan comes out of the National Black Catholic Congress. And so one of the things that we're going to do here in the Archdiocese and that the BCI is taking leadership on is making sure that we send a delegation to the National Black Catholic Congress. You know, so we have this long history in the Archdiocese with the Congress. I mean, Father Augustus Tolton spoke at the first Congress many years ago. So it's great that us as an Archdiocese, that we continue to have a presence there. And so we're going to hope to be taking like 5 or 6 people from each of those predominantly Black Catholic communities as part of the delegation from the Archdiocese. And the hope for us is that we, as a delegation, as this community from Chicago, can be there in the Baltimore area in Washington, D.C., present at Congress together as a local community to really speak about the great things and the strength that we have as the local church in Chicago.
Right. You know, and one of the lovely things about our community here in Chicago is that, you know, we're one of the largest Black Catholic communities in the nation. And so we really have a voice that maybe some other dioceses don't have, or some other locations around the United States don't have. And so being able to speak with force and with authority, to be able to say, no, as a Black community here in Chicago, this has been our experience. And we have the personnel, we have the capital, and the zeal to really lead a conversation.
Yeah, and I think in a very real way, what we experienced here in the Archdiocese, what Cardinal Cupich invited us to as we came to this place of renewal and structural change, that's the reality, unfortunately or fortunately, for a lot of communities across the United States.
Right.
And so Deacon Jim and Valerie and I, we're excited that we're going to get to be one of the breakout presenters and have a session on the experience of Renew My Church in the Archdiocese, to do exactly what you're saying, which is to share our story, to share our experience, to share what we learned through this process of Renew My Church, hopefully to share a little bit of hope that even in the face of what feels like monumental change, we actually can come out stronger as a community through that change.
Right, because I know there are dioceses right now across the United States and in the Midwest particularly that are doing that work that we have just finished and are continuing to do as we build the new reality. And so I think you're absolutely right, because I think I remember when we were in the midst of the consolidations and the new names and things like that, there was a sense of what will tomorrow look like. And so now that we're on the other side of that, being able to provide a little bit of that hope, I pray will give some comfort to those places in the United States that are currently dealing with the situation that we went through.
Yeah, and I think that's, again, for me, this doesn't come from a place of pride, but I think that the Archdiocese of Chicago, the Black Catholic community in Chicago, we have something to offer to the national church. And I think that's hopefully our delegation that goes to Congress this coming summer will just have the opportunity to share some of those experiences and again, to give hope and to remind one another, all of us who minister, who live and work in the Black Catholic community, that there are great things that are happening. We continue to have presence in neighborhoods where we need to be present. We continue to do work for peace and nonviolence. We continue to provide great education in our schools. And so even though our footprint might have changed, and our names have changed. Still, our mission of trying to promote our faith and inviting people into life in our community, that remains. And it's kind of exciting to think about how do we do this in a new way and in a way that's going to last for generations to come.
Yeah, that's when you put all those things together, what we're charged with as a church and as a community of faith, those by themselves seem monumental. But when I really think about the people that make up the solution, it seems much more doable. Between the work of our pastors, our deacons, our lay men and women, our leaders in the community, even just the average person in the pew who hears an inspiring message and who feels convicted to live out the gospel message. When we put all those people together, that makes that load easy, and it makes it very doable because we're all in this together.
Yeah, and I think both of us have this experience because we have a lot of the same friends,
right?
Since you and I are friends most of the time.
Yeah.
We have this experience of like listening to our peers and our colleagues in ministry who are in all different parts of the country, in New Orleans and Washington, D.C., Los Angeles and Indianapolis and Detroit. And I think what we hear is a lot of the same sort of experiences that we have. Mm-hmm. There's this concern about what the future looks like because our numbers aren't the same.
Right.
And what the future looks like because of what we experienced during COVID. And so by going to Congress and by working together, not just here in Chicago, but with all of those people that we share in ministry, it really does give us the opportunity to plan together. How do we continue to move towards the future, to build leaders, to do the work of evangelization, and to really build a stronger community for Black Catholics across the U.S.
No, that's great. And Father Matt, I don't like you lying on me like that, saying that we're friends most of the time. We're friends all the time, Father Matt.
Most of the time.
All the time. So, but Father Matt, I do want to thank you for coming on today for just sharing an update about the Black Catholic community through your work with the BCI. I think it's so important that we hear from leadership in the BCI every couple of months, just to kind of check in on a larger level and to have like these roadmaps to say, okay, here's where we are, here's what we've done, here's where we're going forward. I think it continues to give me hope, and I pray that it continues to give our community hope to say that we're really doing some real work here. We're not just spinning our wheels or talking some talk, but we're doing the good, important work of bringing the gospel alive here in the Archdiocese of Chicago, particularly in the Black community. So, Father Matt, do you have any other closing comments before we send off?
No, just to say thank you. And based on what you just said, I really do look forward to an invitation back for Deacon Jim and Valerie and myself so we can come back and share about the delegation that we're taking to Congress. And then after we get back from Congress, you can have us back again so we can tell you about the great things that we did at Congress. And
Absolutely.
Then as we start to put together that pastoral plan and implement it here in the Archdiocese.
That's great. So I know this episode will be aired towards the end of March, but today is March 13th, and it's the 10th anniversary of the election of Pope Francis as the Bishop of Rome. And so I think it's appropriate that, even though it might be dated by the time of this airing, it's appropriate that even today we take a moment to pray one Hail Mary for His Holiness Pope Francis. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. Amen. My name is Father Michael Trail, and this has been another episode of the Black Catholic Initiative. May God bless the Archdiocese of Chicago and the Black Catholics here in the Archdiocese of Chicago. God bless you all.